All right, my name is Amelia Webb, and I wanted to focus my little lesson on autism. Um, I feel like the backstory behind this is when I was in elementary school, one of my students or one of my peers had autism, and I remember not being very understanding. Like, I feel like I didn't really I was like in third grade. Obviously, I didn't understand, but I feel like the older I've gotten, like kind of looking back, I always wish that I had kind of more of an understanding of just what he was experiencing and how to be a better support to him. And so I feel like that's always kind of stayed with me, that kind of wish that I had known what to do and what to not do and kind of how to be kinder. And so I think because that's always stuck with me, I don't know, I just kind of, not that I'll really be able to make up for it, but I just wanted to spend some time kind of diving into it a little bit more to really help me better understand, so that with my own students, I can be more empathetic, more knowledgeable, and just more educated so that I can be a better support. So, without further ado, basically, an overview of autism is that it's a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain. And so people with, oh, I spelled that wrong, ASD often have problems with social communication and repetitive behaviors or interests. People with ASD may also have different ways of learning, moving, or paying attention. I love how it says they have different ways of learning, moving, or paying attention, that it doesn't say they can't learn or move or pay attention or they are doing the wrong way. They just have different ways. And I really like that. I think it helps us categorize them as human beings who are doing things just like we all do things a little differently. They just do things differently, and it's not better or worse. It also, ASD stands for the spectrum, obviously, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just thought this graph was really helpful to show that it really is a spectrum, and it involves a whole bunch of things like language, social awareness, their mindset, how they process information, sensory processing, repetitive behaviors, and motor differences. And I love how the readings talked about how really it's so different for everyone. And I like how they talked about how almost on every page they mentioned, okay, here are some signs, but it's gonna differ. It doesn't necessarily need to be XYZ, it can be XYB, or there's a whole different range of ways that this can look. And I think that's helpful as teachers to know that our students are unique, and just like there's diversity in all of our students, there's diversity on the spectrum as well. Some interesting facts. I feel like in the readings I learned a lot of things I really had no idea about, like how it begins before the age of 3, which makes sense, but I didn't realize that you could diagnose it so young, and I don't know, I didn't know the age range for that. And also I found it interesting that anxiety, depression, and ADHD occur more often in people with ASD. Oh my gosh, it keeps autocorrecting. ASD than in people without. And I think that helps us be more empathetic. That it's kind of insult to injury that not only do they have to deal with maybe people discriminating against them for being different, but they also have to deal with anxiety and depression on top of that, probably caused sometimes, I'm sure, by the bullying that can happen and the mistreatment. So I think it's just helpful to realize everything that someone can be going through who experiences autism. I also thought all the signs and symptoms were really interesting, like they avoid or do not keep eye contact, they don't respond to their name by 9 months, they don't show facial expressions such as happy, sad, angry, surprised by 9 months, they use few or no gestures by 12 months. I thought it was interesting that all the signs and symptoms had to do with milestones, and they just keep going up to, I saw like the age of 5. And I remember like someone that I know didn't get diagnosed with autism until they were in their late 20s. And so I think that's interesting that it's different. It's different for everyone, and there are a whole bunch of ways that it can show up. And, you know, maybe as teachers, like we might be working with students who have been diagnosed for some time, or they might have just gotten diagnosed, or maybe they have autism and they haven't been diagnosed, like that friend of mine. So I think it's helpful if you know the signs and symptoms, and if you start to see it in a student who might not have the support that they need, then like you can be the one that helps them get that support. They also have restricted or repeated behaviors or interests. So here are some examples of that: repeats words or phrases over and over, plays with toys the same way every time, is focused on parts of objects, has obsessive interests, must follow certain routines, flaps hands, rocks body, or spins self in circles, has unusual reactions to the way things sound, smell, taste, or feel. And let's see. Yeah. And how, like we mentioned before, kids with ASD may not have all or any of the behaviors listed as examples. So I think it's important not to just generalize and do a whole one-size-fits-all when there's a spectrum, as we've talked about. I just wanted to include these because I think it's so cool that as a society we're not only including neurologically diverse individuals in movies and shows, but we're championing them. You know, they're not just side characters or, you know, the best friend, but I think it's cool that in media now that like Love on the Spectrum and Extraordinary Attorney Woo, how their differences are being celebrated. And I think just like how in the media this portrayal is being more positive, like we can also have a role to play and kind of champion their differences. I didn't know these risk factors, like having a sibling with ASD, having a certain genetic condition or chromosomal conditions, experiencing complications at birth, being born to other parents. I hadn't looked over those before, so I thought they were interesting. And then probably most importantly, because this is where we will be interacting with our students, is in the classroom. I found this really great resource called autismspeaks.org, and they just had like a whole list of tips for how as teachers we can really support their learning. And so I'm going to focus on these. They said to be calm and positive, be aware of the characteristics of autism, which is why I spent so long going over all those slides before, because I think it really makes a huge difference. If our students know that we care, we've looked into ourselves, get to know the student personally, promote a welcoming environment, teach understanding and acceptance, be attuned to their social situations, ensure sensory issues are addressed, establish clear routines and habits, consider seating, provide written rules or pictures, use descriptive praise, and give positive directions. I love that this website went into detail with every single one, and I didn't want to spend too long on this, but I definitely recommend going to that website and giving it a good look. They have a whole bunch of resources, and I think that's the cool thing about being a teacher right now is that, you know, if you have a question about anything, I mean, there's a website for it. There are videos on it. There's YouTube for it. There's so many things out there, and the autism community wants us teachers to be empathetic and well equipped. So there are lots of cool things out there. I also really loved, when I looked up online, there are tons of like advice for how to create sensory friendly classrooms. And even if you just Google autism friendly classroom, there are a whole bunch of pictures and examples of ways that you can not only just tailor your teaching to students with autism, but also tailor your classroom and really make it an inclusive space. Also, I thought it was really interesting. There are tons of different treatment approaches. There's behavioral, developmental, educational, social recreational, pharmacological, psychological, complementary, and alternative. I just had no idea. And under each one, there's so many different types of research that have been done and recommendations. And I just think reading this helped me to realize that there's lots of ways that my students who have autism can get support and get help. And while they are in the treatment process, like my classroom can, be a place where they can also get help and be supported throughout that treatment. And I think the more we as teachers understand the treatment opportunities available, like the more we can support our students with their particular treatment. Not that we're providing that treatment, but we understand, we have empathy for what they're doing and what they're experiencing outside of the classroom when they leave our room. These were just 2 other facts that I wanted to end with that I thought were interesting, that kids can get screened for free. And so if we do have a kid in our class who hasn't been diagnosed, we can work with the parents and let them know about these free screening opportunities. And then I also think it was really interesting to learn that autism is 4 times more common among boys than girls.